So my paper, Genesis of an Idea, the Bund's internal debates on the national cultural autonomy in the 1903 Congress, it's a very specific topic, but I will try to give some historical context, and my claim is that actually many of the things that we have been discussing since yesterday, they are already in that particular debate, but I will talk about that in a moment. So my presentation works on the Jewish Labor Bund, in Yiddish, the Allgemeiner Yiddischer Arbeiterbund in Litte, Polen und Russland. That was the official name. It was a party of a revolutionary party of a Marxist revolutionary party trying to organize workers in the context of first Tsarist Russia. The party was founded in 1897. It started as semi-formal circles of intelligenti in Russian and workers that were organized by, Marxist intellectuals. And at some point in the 1890s, they decided to move from just study groups into what they call agitation, which was actual economic works in order to improve worker conditions, unions, strikes, etc., which also meant to move from small circles of workers into massive work, and therefore into the vernacular, the jargon, which is Yiddish, basically. And in 1897, the party was founded in Vilna, and in 1898, it was instrumental in the foundation of the Russian social democracy, which basically meant that the Bund as a party was integral part of the Russian Social Democratic Party. And I'm giving you this historical background because mostly I'm going to be focusing on the period in the middle, and we are, I'm focusing mostly in this period that goes from 1899 to 1903, a period in which this particular party, which was composed by, it was dedicated to the organizing Jewish workers, but actually, originally, those were people who were internationalists in the sense that they saw themselves as part of the general Russian, in the sense of all Russian community in Tsarist Russia, and therefore the idea was, on the one hand, to defend the rights of Jewish workers, but on the other hand, to promote revolution. But in 1899, a group of people, mostly people who had to go to exile, and they were the Foreign Committee of the Bund in Western Europe, they were centered in Geneva, they insisted more and more on the need to organize, to have a national element, to have a national demands in addition to the regular revolutionary demands that the party proposed. In 1899, those were rejected. In 1901, there was an in-principle agreement that A, Jews are a nation, and B, as such, they require some form of collective rights, which in general, it would take the form of national cultural autonomy, but not much detail was added to that, and that decision was contested, and that's the focus of my paper, which focuses on the 1903 debates. And the reason that I'm focusing there is purely tactical. The debate in that particular Congress took 12 hours, not the general debate, the debate on the national question took 13 hours, and we do have pretty detailed minutes of these 13 hours, and these are rich kind of materials. As a result of that, eventually the notion of national cultural autonomy was accepted as a compromise, as I will show you later on, and then the main person in that debate, the person who proposed the resolution and who accepted, was Vladimir Medem, who later on published his work, The National Question on Social Democracy, and which basically after the fact, gave a theoretical framework to the whole idea. And naturally, these debates didn't happen in isolation. And these debates happen in relation to other debates on the national question that were going on since the French Revolution, etc., but specifically debates on the idea of national cultural autonomy and non-territorial autonomy. And in that sense, I'm bringing some key works there. 1899, Karl Renner, Staat und Nation, which is a basic text. Actually, it wasn't available in, it was mostly available in German in some translations, but thanks to Ephraim Nimni, it's now available in English too. As I mentioned, and that same year, there was the Brunn conference of the Austrian Gesamtpartei, the Austrian Socialist Party of the Austrian Empire, which some people, in which the ideas of Renner were debated, but were basically rejected. If anything, the Congress decided that they if anything, they will go with some form of territorial autonomy, but the perception among many people was that they were actually accepted. So when some people within the Bund, they go to the conference and they insist that they need to debate these ideas, they're actually saying, well, like the Austrians, which actually didn't accept it. But that's a different issue. As I said, 1906, Vladimir Medem, and 1907, Otto Bauer, who published Social Democracy and the National Question. And in his memoirs, Vladimir Medem says, well, this work by Otto Bauer became so influential, and the work by Otto Bauer also translated to English and edited by Ephraim. It's a big, heavy history of nations, of the development of nations, and the need for national cultural autonomy. And what Medem says in his memoirs is that, well, we basically claim the same things, which is true in many ways, but it's untrue in a crucial aspect that Bauer did not propose autonomy for Jews, because he basically said Jews are going to integrate, to assimilate to the larger groups, and they don't need a separate autonomy, which, again, in the context, and that's we go back to our own debates, the debates within the social that I'm talking here are also part of the debates within the Russian social democracy, in which the status of the Bund within the party was debated. And the question was, the Bund, as the representative of the Jewish workers, should have an autonomous status within the party or not, which was basically what Lenin, who had an idea of a centralist party, rejected. And therefore, the work by Stalin that we saw, that I mentioned before, and was published in 1913, and in which the debate by Liebman Hersh, etc., are connected, basically it's a rejection of the whole idea of autonomy in general, and in many cases it's a response to the Bund and to the ideas of Renner and Bauer, and taking great advantage of the contradictions between the two of them on the Jewish question. Now, what I'm trying to say is that going to this conference, the 1903 conference, we have basically three groups within the Bund. We have those who, for lack of other term, we're going to call them internationalists, and I'm bringing here, they're not really quotations, they are paraphrasing, I just summarize it to make it convenient to our argument. And those people, they play much more importance into the collaboration of the Bund with other nations, a collaboration of Jews with other nations, and B, they didn't give importance to national identity, and basically they claimed that there is a good chance that Jews are going to assimilate anyway. Jews in Russia will assimilate just the way that Jews in Western Europe were assimilating, and therefore there is no need for collective rights because individual rights are going to be there. So Tzemach Koppelson, for example, says East European Jews as a non-historical nation. This is a Hegelian term later adopted by Marx and Engels, would eventually assimilate into the dominant Russian culture, which they said that it's not Russian because there is something superior Russian. It's international culture in the Russian form, a concept that later on Medem develops. Just as the Jews in the West were undergoing a process of assimilation, Jews' assimilation was not only unavoidable but also desirable, meaning there is something good that smaller nations will assimilate into bigger nations. This is people who are representing the Jewish workers as a step towards total assimilation. And they said, Sholom Levin says, well, actually national cultural autonomy is not going to help the Jews because it's going to hinder the possibility to take general culture. If anything, the main problem of Russian Jewish workers was that they have the lack of possibility to assimilate, and that lack of assimilation will be solved just by getting individual rights and not collective rights. And David Katz says, well, this whole idea, it's kind of bringing medieval constitutionary law, the notion that different corporations have different rights and obligations, into the future democratic society, and he rejected it altogether. On the other hand, we have, I call them the nationally oriented, meaning I'm not myself, but they didn't call themselves nationalists because even though they were demanding national rights, they didn't demand national sovereignty. They consciously consider themselves not to be nationalists. And they basically say, well, we need to provide a solution with collective rights to the issue of national identity, because if we don't do it, then the nationalists are going to do it, which was the main suspicion of the internationalists. They were in other parts of the debate, they said, well, we're not, it's not that the masses are demanding it. We are only influenced by Jewish and Polish nationalists. And basically, there was a big resistance to going that way, and the autonomists, they were the middle ground. I'm bringing here a quotation from Tzidi Oritz, who was a main character in the Bund in Watch, and Vladimir Medem, who basically makes similar claims to what many people around here have been saying since yesterday, but certainly since the first lecture that we have by a friend yesterday morning, in which it says, well, individual rights provided by bourgeois democracy is going to go so far, but there is a need to provide collective rights in order to prevent forced assimilation. Urbitz, Medem, others, they didn't have trouble with assimilation per se. They have the trouble that people will be forced to assimilate to the dominant culture because they don't have other options. And from there we'll go to Medem, and Medem is a topic which is, since as I said, he published his own treatise on the topic, which has been published to German by Kai a couple of years ago, and Vincenzo is producing a translation to Italian, and I'm working on a translation to English, meaning this is stuff that has been produced 120 years, 115 years ago, and haven't been almost translated. It was published in Russian and Yiddish at the same time. The Russian is very inaccessible, and the Yiddish was well known among Bundists, but it's really not well known outside. There is a part of it that are translated to different languages, to Hebrew. And I'm not going to go very far on on Medem, but what Medem says is that we need a middle ground between assimilationism, that's the way that he presented the internationalism, meaning the way the people who actively want to assimilate, and nationalism, and that is Zionism, etc., the people who demand rights just for their own national group. He is proposing some form of middle ground, national cultural autonomy, which will self-limit to cultural issues themselves, meaning all other issues. In that sense, he follows Renner. There's going to be 3 tiers of government: national, meaning all state, regional, and cultural, and Jews will demand only cultural rights. I'm trying to finish on time. How am I doing? Ooh, I'm well past my time, I think. What I'm trying to say is that, well, the positions in this case, and to the best of my knowledge, the Jewish Labor Bund was the first political organization to adopt an autonomist plan, meaning as a plan, as a program. I may be mistaken because somebody can say, well, actually this particular grouping, whatever, have it before, but it's certainly one of the early ones to adopt an autonomist program. Not the first one to debate it, but certainly the first one to adopt it officially. And what we see there already in 1906 is many of the dilemmas that haven't been solved in most cases, and even the Kurds, or in plurinational states like Bolivia, they are under brutal, violent attack. As a middle ground and the solution that it's not one size fits all to the issue of coexistence of different national groups in plurinational states. I think that's it for now. Thank you very much.